Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're doing something really special. We're bringing together some of history's absolute greatest psychological and spiritual minds. We're talking Carl Jung, Gabor Maté, and Paramahansa Yogananda to explore concepts that will literally transform how you view the journey of parenting. So, let's jump right into it.
Okay, we're going to kick things off with a massive paradigm shift. What if the deepest purpose of parenting isn't about control at all, but rather healing generational karma? Right away, this completely reframes parenthood. It's no longer this task of shaping some blank slate. Instead, it becomes this deep, incredibly powerful spiritual mirror for our very own inner lives.
Carl Jung illustrates this shift beautifully. He explains that a kid doesn't just walk into an empty physical house, they're stepping into what he calls a psychic field. And Gabor Maté actually takes this a step further, pointing out that this psychic field is heavily shaped by the parents' own nervous systems and their unresolved stress. Basically, the environment is already deeply emotional, long before a single word is even spoken.
So, we really have to ask ourselves, why do our kids so often trigger such intense, visceral reactions in us? Why do they force us to confront our own unhealed pasts or those unlived dreams we thought we buried? Whether it's a massive meltdown over a broken crayon or a teenager's sudden defiance, the source material shows us that this isn't just some behavioral flaw in the child, it's actually a deeply rooted psychological mechanism in the parent, one that we're usually completely blind to.
Jung captured this entire dynamic perfectly with one incredibly powerful quote: "The shadow returns through love." Think about a parent who, back when they were a kid, was constantly told to be perfectly quiet. Fast forward, and suddenly they're feeling this intense, almost unexplainable resentment toward their own bold, loud child. The child is simply expressing the exact traits the parent was forced to repress. The crucial takeaway here is the stark contrast between illusion and reality. The illusion is that a child is born solely into their parent's biology, but the reality? The reality is that the child is born into the parent's unconscious life, their emotional weather. We have to wake up to the fact that a child arrives to awaken the unseen destiny of the parent. They serve as a very real, very honest mirror for our hidden grief, our pride, and our fear.
Section 2. Triggering your deepest wounds. The mirror and the trigger.
When a parent feels sudden rage, fear, or shame toward a child, whose pain is truly being awakened? It's a tough, Socratic question, but we have to face it. Think about a time a toddler's simple refusal to put on their shoes suddenly filled you with this totally disproportionate, volcano-level anger. Why is the reaction so massive compared to a tiny pair of shoes?
Well, Gabor Maté offers a profound insight here. He says, the reaction feels present, but its roots are often old. He points out that our nervous system is literally reacting to an old danger. We're essentially mistaking a kid's completely normal, age-appropriate behavior for some historic, unresolved threat from our own past.
Psychologist Alice Miller explains this phenomenon through what we call the forgotten child. This is that buried emotional memory within the parent that is still desperately seeking a witness and validation. You see, adults often unconsciously punish in their children the exact feelings they themselves were punished for. Meaning, in those heated moments, you're usually reacting to the forgotten child inside yourself, not the living, breathing kid standing right in front of you.
I really want you to let that sink in for a second. The child is not the cure. The child is the revelation. Your child's job is not to make you feel successful or obeyed or even loved. Rather, their mere existence is designed to reveal the psychological work that you still need to do on yourself.
Section 3. Guidance versus control. Navigating the turning point.
James Hillman makes a brilliant distinction here. He points out that control is basically editing the child's image out of fear and anxiety. It replaces a child's authentic becoming with the parent's fears. True guidance, on the other hand, means reading the child's image out of respect and emotional safety. It's paying close attention to the unique soul pattern that the child was actually born with.
As Kahlil Gibran so eloquently puts it, the line is crossed when love becomes possession. Gibran uses this gorgeous metaphor of the parent as a bow and the child as a living arrow moving beyond it. He reminds us that, sure, we can shelter their bodies, but we absolutely cannot and should not imprison their souls.
And that brings us to individuation. This is the absolutely necessary process of a child becoming their authentic self. The problem is, families so often mistake this natural process for betrayal or disobedience.
If a parent views this healthy separation as a betrayal, Maté warns that the child will tragically end up sacrificing their own authenticity just to preserve the parent's attachment. And that right there is a direct pipeline to deep anxiety or addiction later on in life.
Section 4. Healing Generational Karma, the Climax of Parenting.
To really get this, we first need to understand generational karma. It's that hidden family inheritance of silence, rage, fear of joy, or fear of truth that gets passed down through entirely unconscious behavior. But, as Paramahansa Yogananda notes, karma isn't some sort of divine punishment, it's the soul's opportunity to learn love. And here is the best part. Just one conscious parent can interrupt a pattern that has lived in a family for generations.
Alice Miller highlights a really heavy but ultimately liberating truth here. She says, the parent must mourn the childhood they did not receive. To stop repeating the harm, you literally cannot just gloss over your past. You have to actively grieve the protection, the safety, and the tenderness that you deserved but were denied. Without that active mourning, the pain just wanders around, seeking another child to carry it.
So synthesizing the insights of Jung, Miller, and Maté, the actual healing process comes down to 3 critical steps. Step 1, notice the trigger and acknowledge the pain inwardly. Step 2, mourn your own unmet childhood needs. And finally, Step 3, apologize and repair the connection with your child. These steps give us a roadmap for processing our own shadow without turning the child into an altar for our unexamined pain.
This brings us to a key point that we honestly forget way too often. Repair is not weakness. Gabor Maté emphasizes that parents are inevitably going to react poorly sometimes. I mean, we're only human, right? But going back to your child to say, hey, I handled that badly and you did not deserve my anger is exactly what actually breaks the karmic chain. It teaches them humility and it fully restores their sense of safety.
Section 5. Freedom through conscious love, the liberation. There is a remarkably stark contrast between attachment and love. Attachment demands, you are mine, which creates this heavy emotional debt. True love, however, says you are entrusted to me. Yogananda teaches that shifting from this ego-driven sense of ownership to a sense of stewardship completely purifies the bond. It lifts that massive burden of emotional debt that the child was never, ever meant to carry in the first place.
So, at the end of the day, what does the conscious parent actually achieve? Well, they stop generations of anger and silence. They give freedom right alongside guidance. They successfully separate their own shadow from the child, and they love without demanding possession. The ultimate goal is crystal clear. By dropping our fantasy of the perfect child, we replace inherited fear with unconditional conscious love. We literally prove that love doesn't need fear to remain strong.
It really all boils down to this. When the parent becomes conscious, the child receives freedom. By removing the crushing burden of forcing your kid to become your unlived life or expecting them to somehow heal your unmet needs, you perform the absolute quiet miracle of true parenting. You just let them be exactly who they are.
I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought. What must you become so your child does not have to pay for your unconscious life? I highly encourage you to reflect deeply on that question as you continue your very own journey of healing and stewardship. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer.